It is 10:45 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It is the third day of May 2024. This is episode 892 of Bitcoin, and the Circle P is open for business. And if I can find my Circle P, I will let you know what's going on with the Leathermint. That's right. You want sovereignty and style? Well, then you're going to go to theleathermint.com and get yourself a wallet, belt, passport holder, what have you. They got all kinds of neat stuff. It's all leather, 100%, and it's hand stitched. And stitching is what makes the difference of a highly utilizable wallet that has a long life. Now they just had an auction for a special wallet. Let me see if I can't get that won that. The fourth halving wallet seems to have been won for the low price of 650 sats. It looks like it was Wallet Fan got that. 650 satoshis was the final bid for this particular wallet, and at price, I guess it's they're listing the dollar price as of the whatever price Bitcoin was at the end of the auction at $402.43. It's an auction. What do you expect? It's going to be a high price. And people wanted this wallet because it's got an NFC chip in it. It's got a signing device in it. It's an amazing looking wallet. And here's what I'm hoping for the Leathermint, that they will produce this wallet as a standard object. This is the wallet that I want. This is the wallet I've been waiting for. Use it as a digital wallet. You can use it as a signing device, and you can use it for filthy credit cards and cash. But if you go over to theleathermint.com and type in the code Bitcoin, and they'll give you 10% off. And that way they'll also know to spring me some Satoshis for making a sale for them. That's theleathermint.com. If you want to get a hold of them over on Nostr, it's at Leathermint. And if you want to go to Deadbird site for what do that, it's like walking through a graveyard. At the Leathermint, all one word. That is at the Leathermint, all one word, over there on the Deadbird site. Now, let's get into today. This is going to be a little bit different. There's an issue going on in Washington State, which is where I live presently. I'm friends with a bunch of cattle guys. One of the first things that I did was become a member of the County Cattlemen's Association, just so I could get to know some of the local cattle ranchers out in this neck of the woods, and it worked. I now know quite a few ranchers out. But I also get notified when news about ranching breaks, and it comes out of the Washington Cattlemen's Association, which is the umbrella structure or architecture of all the county cattlemen's association. It gives structure, get into a little bit more of that, but for now, just understand that I am part of a county cattlemen's association, and they are part of the Washington State Cattlemen's Association, and they in turn have the largest umbrella architecture of the United States Cattlemen's Association. It handles all the states, and each particular state has their own counties they umbrella. That's sort of. Now, let's get on with this. The news broke a couple of days ago. This has been going on for a while, but things have come to a head with something known as the King Ranch, out here, out in central Washington, state of Washington. There is this called the King Ranch, and it's not the King Ranch out in Texas, right? It's a completely different family that owns this. They're in a lot of hot water with Washington State Department of Ecology and the Department of Natural Resources. I want to get into this right now. This is the issue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some key issues that are related to the Department of Ecology, DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, actions that are impacting livestock production public land leases and water rights in Washington. Okay, so this is going to give you sort of this is our entry point. No rancher could have known that historically customary agricultural practices that are used permit exempt stock watering would all of a sudden be declared off limits by the Department of Ecology unless approval was first obtained from Ecology, even though no permit exists to grant such authority. Okay, well, that's all well and good, right? But there's another issue at hand. So I want that to be the entry point so that you go, what's this DOE, DNR, King's Ranch, permit, leasing? That gives the context, everything that I'm about to say. So I get this forward of a forward of a forward email about the DOE, and it's coming from King's attorney, and her name is Matheson, I believe. Bottom of this, Tony Meacham is the lawyer for the Kings. So she's defending the Kings against what is arguably one of the largest breaches of public trust I've ever seen in my life. This is beyond clown world. This goes into, well, we'll get into it. Tony says, I am one of the attorneys representing the King Ranch in the current dispute with the DOE and the DNR. Currently, the case has spilled over into another county, and we have become aware that the Department of Ecology sent a letter to at least the Douglas County Planning Director regarding their allegations against the Kings. In Grant County, the AG's office sought and obtained concurrent jurisdiction to investigate the Kings for alleged criminal charges. Criminal charges against the Kings that own the King Ranch. Right? This isn't like failure to pay your lease. This isn't, oops, I didn't get a license for something. No, they're bringing criminal charges against these ranchers that have been on this land for over a fistful of decades, 60 years at least. Okay, now, the Kings are vigorously fighting the allegations and unsubstantiated actions taken by these state agencies. I thought it might be a good idea to send to you some of the briefings in the case so that you can obtain a broad understanding of what has been going on. We have wanted to get this case in front of as many people as possible. This is a case where a rancher did nothing wrong. The baseless accusations stem from the Kings using historical stock watering ponds that are exempt under RCW and then chapter and verse. So it doesn't require a permit for watering. Further, just to be clear, the stock ponds in question have been on the King Ranch for generations. No new ponds were dug, however. The RCW does allow digging of ponds again without a permit. These historic stock ponds were recharacterized by the Department of Ecology as alkali wetlands, even though they are man-made and maintained. I am also including an article, a letter from elected officials, a letter from some of the agriculture commodity groups. Currently, there are various lawsuits and actions between the Kings, the DNR, DOE. The basic fact pattern is best laid out in the APA petition. The issue stems from the historical, customary ranching practice of digging and maintaining stockwater ponds in arid lands to allow livestock and wildlife to have a watering source. The one filing is a brief in support because the AG or Attorney General's office is trying to find criminal charges to bring in an effort to further their civil cause. In that case, which they have brought based on the same set of events, they have issued a subpoena using what's known as a special inquiry judge proceeding on the King's only employee, and I will not give that employee's name here. in an effort to force this employee to testify against his employers, the SIJ, or Special Inquiry Judge proceeding, enacted in Washington to deal with, guess what? Organized crime. Please take a second to reread that sentence and let it sink in. The Attorney General of the state of Washington is using an organized crime statute against ranchers who have done nothing wrong. Now, I'm pausing here to say one word: RICO. RICO. This has now become a RICO case. Don't know what a RICO charge is. It is organized crime. They're equating these ranchers of mobsters. Think, I don't know, Bugsy Seagal? I think it was Bugsy. Go watch the movie Bugsy. He helped build Las Vegas. Complete mobster. The Chicago mob, the New York mob. There's mobsters everywhere. Everywhere. Organized crime. RICO charges, and special inquiry judges basically built to handle organized crime. They're using this architecture against people that raise cattle. Go on. There are hundreds of pages of this briefing. If you want more, I'm happy to provide it. This case has wide-ranging implications related to the agricultural industry in Washington. At this point, the Kings have a great team of attorneys and experts that are working hard to ensure that the stockwater exemption is supported and defended. Please let me know if there's anything else you need. We are seeking help with the funding of this case. Cases of this nature are extremely expensive. The implications for all of agriculture, if this case is lost, is enormous. Thank you for your time. Okay. So what, may you ask, is what's the real detail? Okay. So I went to my local county's cattlemen's meeting last night, and it was one of the most somber meetings I've ever been. And we had, I don't know, there were probably about 12 people there total, most of them actively ranching. And they are clearly, not only are they not happy, they're actually not even mad. They're really worried. They're really worried. All of them have stock pump. And what I found out last night was really chilling. The Washington State Cattlemen's Association has not said a word about this case. They have made no inquiries to the government, to the state government of Washington. They have not sent any pushback at all. And a Cattlemen's Association is there specifically to protect cattle people. Cattlemen, cattlewomen, farm, ranch. That's what they're there for. Their structure is exactly for this, and they have not said a thing. This thing's been going on for a while. It's just now really come to light in the public for a reason I'll get into. But when your own Cattlemen's Association you depend on to help protect you is basically away without leave, AWOL, just totally AWOL, you should be worried. And that's why these ladies and gentlemen at the meeting last night were sorely. This is not just, this is ridiculous. And it's not just because of what I'm about to tell you. It's the fact that they are using a RICO charge to essentially strip a United States citizen, their employee, of Fifth Amendment rights. He would not be able to take the Fifth Amendment under this particular situation. He would be forced to testify, and he would not be able to take the Fifth Amendment. This should scare the living shit out of everybody with it. Okay, so we've got that part. Now we can get back here. Here's what really happened. The ranchers in question have these stock ponds, which I've mentioned. Now, the total amount of acreage that we're talking about, ranch that is owned and the adjoining lands that ranchers are leasing total about 20,000 acres. Say that again, 20,000 acres in central Washington. The average rainfall is 2 to 4 inches a year. It is dry as a bone. Anybody out there that's been out in West Texas or eastern New Mexico, it looks exactly like that. Most people go, oh, you're in Washington, everything is green. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it is not. East of the Olympic Mountains, that mountain chain, all the way to the Palouse, it is dry as a bone. It's amazing how dry it is. Looks exactly like eastern New Mexico, drier than West Texas. There's no wetland except for these stock ponds, which there are a total of 21, with a total acreage of water of 6 acres out of 20,000 acres. They're bitching about 6 acres total. That is part of a system of stock watering ponds that were man-made, and there's 21 of them. Okay, so they're filled with water. What happens when you have a depression? Even if you've only got 2 to 4 inches of rain, eventually what happens to the depression that you've dug out? It fills in with silt. So you have to go dredge the pond so that you can get some depth back. That's what they were doing. And it turns out that what happened is that, quote unquote, a private citizen was hiking across this ranch. They had apparently a right to do, and spied heavy equipment next to a pond. No actual dredging was being done. It was just a tractor out there next to a pond. And they phoned up the exact county or exact state agencies that would be the most pissed off about it. I call bullshit. I don't think this was a private citizen. I think this is a con job from. Okay, so here's the thing. When I said that there was, I basically said that there was no permit process for them to be able to get a permit to do the thing that has gotten them. Let's examine that. They were told, these ranchers were told after the fact, that they should have applied for a permit to do the dredging so that they would have been. Then they were also told, and by the way, even if you had applied for the permit, we would have denied you the permit because they're alkali. Okay. That's great. Except here's the thing. No permit exists. There's no architecture for these ranchers to be able to go, hey, we're dredging our ponds, we need a permit. It's never been required. No permit has ever existed before. But InstaRule from the state of Washington comes down the pipe and says, well, now these are alkali wetlands, whatever the F that is. Whatever. It's just, we'll give it to them. Then they're told that they should have gotten a permit, but no permit exists. And even if it did exist, that they wouldn't have been approved for that permit in the first place. So what are they supposed to do? Just let the stock ponds fill in while their 400 to 600 head of cattle herd just what? Dies? Because that's exactly what's going to happen out in central Washington. There's no water. There's no aquifer. There's no windmills out there to be able to pump water from an aquifer. There's no diesel pumps to pump water from an aquifer. There's nothing out there. There's some groundwater that they can get to, and that's what they actually use in ponds in emergencies. But generally speaking, they're able to capture whatever rainfall they can get. That's how they keep cattle alive during the summer months. But now, not anymore. They've got to let them fill in, which would eventually do what? They'd fill all the way up to the top, and there would be no wetlands anymore because there would be nothing to hold water. The whole thing is disgusting. So, why all of a sudden Why all of a sudden? Why did this happen all of a sudden? Why the Insta rule? Why all of a sudden nobody's ever heard of alkali wetlands entire life, at least in the state of Washington? All of a sudden they're everywhere. Everybody's got alkali wetlands on their land. Well, it has something to do with something called the Sackett case. Now, let me do this one. This is from NPR.org. The EPA removes federal protections for most of the country's wetlands. This was published August 29th, 2023. So this was almost, this coming August, it will be a full year from now that this Supreme Court case was decided. Just bear with me. The Environmental Protection Agency removed federal protections for a majority of the country's wetlands on Tuesday to comply with a recent United States Supreme Court ruling. The EPA and Department of the Army announced a final rule amending the definition of protected waters of the United States in light of the decision of Sackett versus the EPA in May, which narrowed the scope of the Clean Water Act and the agency's power to regulate waterways and wetlands. Developers and environmental groups have for decades argued about the scope of the 1972 Clean Water Act in protecting waterways and wetlands. Quote, while I am disappointed by the Supreme Court's decision in the Sackett case, EPA and Army have an obligation to apply this decision alongside our state co-regulators, tribes, and partners, EPA Administrator Michael Regan said in a statement. A 2006 Supreme Court decision determined that wetlands would be protected if they had a significant nexus to major waterways. This year's court decision undid that standard. The EPA's new rule removes the significant nexus test from consideration when identifying tributaries and other waters as federally protected. In May, Justice Samuel Alito said the navigable U.S. waters regulated by the EPA under the Clean Water Act do not include many previously regulated wetlands. Writing the court's decision, he said the law includes only streams, oceans, rivers, and lakes, and wetlands with a continuous surface connection to those bodies previously mentioned. EPA said that the rule takes effect immediately. As a result of the rule change, protections for many waterways and wetlands now fall to the states. Ah, there it is. This is now a 10th Amendment situation. Environmental groups said that the new rule underscores the problems of the Supreme Court decision. That's all we need to know from this particular. I'm going to kill that right here. Now I'm going to get back into the Insta rule. The reason that the DOE and the DNR in the state of Washington has come out this hard, I believe they are making an example of King Ranch to say that, well, since the water stuff is no longer protected by the federal agencies, watch what we can do. They're going to destroy cattle ranching in the state. And they're starting with the King. So specific to the King Ranch, the Department of Ecology rushed to judgment based on aerial photos that were incorrectly interpreted by untrained ecology staff. We now know that there was a hiker involved. They've ignored statutes related to agricultural conversion impacts enforcement. They've ignored legislative direction to not impair water rights by enforcement of the Water Pollution Control Act. They've ignored RCW 90.44.050, which allows for the exempt withdrawal of groundwater for stock watering purposes. And ecology has failed to fully explore the protection of all beneficial uses that accrue to the livestock pond. Our experts say these are not wetlands. Not wetlands, because they do not meet the three-part test. So this was no environmental damage and actually a net benefit for wildlife and birds who also access the water. The Attorney General's office is investigating criminal felony charges against the Kings for these alleged activities. The AG's office is further using RCW 10.29, which was intended to detect and eliminate organized criminal activity, to pursue their secret investigation into these, quote, alleged criminal charges against the Kings for alleged maintenance activities on these stock watering ponds have been going on for decades. The AG is using the special, or the SIJ, the special judge, on a King's employee, trying to take away his Fifth Amendment rights and force him into testifying against his will. That one. So there's really two issues. There's two amendments that are here. One is Washington is saying now it's a 10th Amendment right. Federal government has no say-so over what goes on with these waters, so now we do. This is their reaction. And the reaction from the Washington Cattlemen's Association is to say absolutely nothing. There is no protection afforded by the Washington Cattlemen's Association to family. Why are they even? Why is the Cattlemen's Association at the United States level? Why is not the complete umbrella of all cattlemen associations that govern the 50 states of the United States not completely losing their flipping mind? Because now, because of the organized crime and the RICO charge, we have their only employee that is going to be forced to testify against his will, which is a complete break of the Fifth Amendment. So I never knew this, that a RICO charge could force somebody to testify against their will, which is exactly why the Fifth Amendment exists in the first place, so that you do not have to. Because if he's the guy, and he probably is the guy that's actually doing the dredging, then he's actually the one committing the destruction of said alkali wetlands. Bullshit in the first place. In the second place, it's bullshit because you cannot, under the Fifth Amendment, get anybody to testify against their will. But apparently, way back in the day, this is probably why prohibition occurred in the first place. They knew that it was going to be organized crime that did all of the carrying of the illegal alcohol, all the 50 states, because people are going to want to drink. And they said, look, we've got to have some kind of protection against organized crime. You don't think that this kind of shit won't happen in Bitcoin, you are wrong. And that's where we tie back into this. The very same bullshit that we've been seeing over this last week. Tornado Cash, Samurai Wallet, and then all the people that are pulling out of the United States because of the Samurai Wallet thing. None of them want to have anything to do with this because the United States cannot get its legal shit together. And we're not going to get our legal shit together as long as criminals are involved in this. But it goes way beyond Bitcoin now, doesn't it? This is the exact same shit, but it's going on with cattle ranching. So for all the people that ever question me about why it is that I look for edges between two groups of things, this is why. We're not in a position to help ourselves, then we are certainly not in a position to offer any kind of help to people like the King's Ranch. Somehow or another, we're going to have to start spilling over. So luckily, that said, the County Cattlemen's Association that I'm part of voted last night to give $5,000 out of our purse to Tony Meacham and her legal trust fund for the King. So we've given, at least at the county level, we've stepped up and said, here's $5,000. It's nowhere close to enough. I understand that. I get that, but it's something. You know what happened when we were voting on, right before we took a vote on that? Somebody raised the question, if they find out it's us, will they come after all of the individual county ranchers in the Cattlemen's Association? Think about that. This is like, Wasabi pulling out of whoever pulled out of the United States. Has been 3 wallets that said, nope, we're pulling it out. We're pulling our wallets out of the store. My node is taking Dojo and Whirlpool away. Do you see a pattern? I certainly see a pattern. Either event, let's move on. Let's just go ahead and move on and get into some actual Bitcoin news, because that's all I've got to. for you on the King's Ranch. One last thing, I have talked to a guy that said that he would be willing to come on the show. He's not the rancher, but he's somebody that's in play in this entire fiasco. So I'm going to try to get him on, and we're going to talk about this in depth. But I wanted to at least have part of this show dedicated to the King's Ranch and cattle ranchers, just because they're going to need our help, like we're going to need ourselves. All right. So with all that said, in fact, let's just go ahead and run the numbers. Then on CNBC futures and commodities, what do we got? We've got oil. Wow, taking it on the chin. It's down 0.82% for West Texas at $78. We are now under the $80 mark. Brent North Sea is 0.66% to the downside, 83.13. Natural gas is up 5%. Gasoline is down 1.5 to $2.50 a gallon. Gold moving sideways essentially. Silver is down a half. Platinum is up a third. Copper is 1.5. Palladium is up almost a point. Excuse me. Agricultural futures. Chocolate is the biggest winner for the day, 5.91% to the upside. The only loser is coffee, 2.5 to the downside. Live cattle basically moving sideways. Lean hogs are down a full point. Feeder cattle are down 0.16. The Dow having a good day today, 1.24% to the upside. S&P is up 1.1. NASDAQ is up 2, and S&P is up 1%, simply because employment figures came out and everybody believes the lie, and that's going to be all they said about that until they revise those numbers downwards, which they always do. $61,800 is the price of one. That is a 1.22 market cap. 26.9 ounces of shiny metal rocks you may buy with your one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,693,352.7 of. And average fees per block have fallen again to a quarter of a Bitcoin. And that's going to do it. Wow, Mark Moody. Let's see. How many blocks we got going on? 236 blocks carrying 200,000 unconfirmed transactions, clearing at high priority rates at 32 Satoshis per V-byte, low priorities at 28, and anything under 6, you're going to be sponged from mempools around the world. 580 exahashes per second is what I'm seeing for hash rate at this time. Now, from episode 891, Indict Us All episode of Bitcoin. And I've got Joseph Joey Joe with 5,000 sats, says nothing. Wartime with 3333 says nothing. Dubrovko with 1680 says, I was going to make a connection between our overlords and farmers until Spearco shared that Samurai Wallets told the world that they want to service gray and black markets, thus setting themselves up for arrests and DOJ takeovers of their website address. Just because they're out to get you doesn't mean that it wasn't warranted this time. And then a fight ensues between a couple of people in Dubrovko. I'm going to keep that to myself. If you want to go see it, it is public on the episode. You can see that found in fountain.app. But we're going to say Christian Farmer 67 with 1,000 says tax slave. Absolutely. Michael Sparks with 1,000 says great show. MN. Other than Minnesota. Kenneth Lloyd with 500 says nothing. And Pies has a message that I'm going to keep to myself. He did write it publicly, but I'm going to wait until Pies tells me that it's okay to read that. He does say with 420 sats later on, thank you, sir, no thank you, and that is Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use: bulletproof Cadillac, a butler, and $1.5 million Titanic watch. FTX executives, lavish spending continues. And this is from decrypt.co. As Sam Bankman-Fried stares down the barrel of a 25-year prison sentence, most of his former FTX colleagues have done their best to stay out of the limelight, but for one former executive of the collapsed crypto exchange, well, he's now raising eyebrows for his extravagant purchases. Patrick Groon, former head of FTX Europe, recently spent $1.5 million to acquire a gold watch found on the corpse of a victim of the Titanic. My God, how macabre is that? According to a report from the Wall Street Journal, anyway. The watch originally belonged to John Jacob Astor, American business magnate considered to be the richest passenger on the doomed 1912 transatlantic. Groon told the Journal he bought the watch as a gift for his wife due to the kinship he felt with the Astor family, which set out from Germany in the 18th century to find fortune in America. John Jacob Astor, the family dynasty's founder, made his fortune by establishing a monopoly in the North American fur trade, smuggling drugs into China, and scooping up cheap New York real estate. Like the late businessman whose watch he now owns, FTX's Groon was also born in Germany before setting out to the United States. He too amassed a fortune, but one that has come with a fair amount of legal scrutiny. In November of 2021, FTX spent $376 million to acquire a Swiss crypto firm run by Groon and his business partners, which would then become FTX Europe. According to a lawsuit later filed in the bankruptcy, the firm had yet to operate and only boasted a business plan. Further, no due diligence was completed by FTX's attorneys about Groon's firm before the acquisition was completed. Over the next 2 years, according to the same lawsuit, Groon spent over $4 million from FTX Europe to Kifas, a company that he personally owned, for unspecified consulting services. And during the same time, per the FTX lawsuit, Groon used Kifas to purchase a custom $146,000 bulletproof Cadillac Escalade. He also used funds from the company to pay the salaries of a butler, a full-time chef, a housekeeper, and multiple estate managers, all of whom worked at his 700-acre private home in Lapine, Oregon. That's in the United States, by the way. The suit, filed last summer, sought to compel Groon and his partners to pay back the huge sums they received from FTX, which allegedly consisted of misappropriated FTX funds. Well, clear. After Groon and his partners filed a countersuit, both sides settled in February. However, FTX Europe's former heads agreeing to buy back the entity for roughly $33 million. Groon continues to live in Oregon, where he purchased 8 properties during the period he led FTX Europe. He is now building a crypto derivative exchange in Europe, according to the report, and operates a Catholic television network in Germany. That's the kind of people. That's the kind of people we're dealing with. All right, so this shit is probably far from over. But in case you missed it, FTX bought Groon's company and literally did nothing with it. Because for them, the money that they were earning was all stolen, which means it was all easy. You had VC funds coming in. You had just money just pouring down the water pipes on you. And therefore, that money is so cheap, you didn't lift a finger to make any of it. So you don't do the due diligence when you buy a company. You just buy a company. You don't really care what the company does or who runs it or the kinds of personalities that are behind that. That's what we meant. We were talking about how easy money has dried up. When Silvergate Bank folded, and that was a lot of VC money dried up. And now media companies are folding. Everything's like, all this stuff is just folding. There's The VC cash is just slowed to a trip. They'll probably open up again. It'll all be AI, but whatever. But this is the kind of shit that VC money brings. This is the kind of crap when people are just thieving money because the dumb money is just putting their money into FTX because Tom Brady said to. Well, this is the kind of shit you get. You get literally a company out there in Switzerland who has no oversight, but it has access to oodles of cash. What do you think is going to happen, dude? Well, let's come back to the States. Senator Cynthia Lummis, has slammed the DOJ for hyper-aggressive stances on self-custody software. At least somebody's saying something, right? I am deeply troubled by the Department of Justice's hyper-aggressive argument that non-custodial software can constitute a money transmission service, she said. This stance contradicts existing Treasury guidance, common sense, violates the rule of law. Arguments against self-custody software threaten the fundamental property rights that are core to being an American. I will do everything that I can to fight for your rights to hold your own keys and run your own node. I find that last sentence, and there's some stuff that Cynthia Lummis does that I don't agree with. I don't like how she's some of the people in Washington. But when she says things like hold your own keys and run your own node, it makes me think that Cynthia Lummis's general operating system is still fairly well intact. So I'm going to cut her some slack for having to deal with the rest of the scumbags that are see because they're all scumbags. Right? But she's right. You need to hold your own keys and run your own node. Brings me to the fact that I bought a Server Pure, I believe, from Start9. They are not a sponsor. But I am really surprised that my little Raspberry Pi full node that also has a Lightning node in it is actually still functional. Given all of the stuff that I've seen about Raspberry Pis failing all over the place, I'm getting nervous. So I finally pulled the trigger. I will let you know how set up and all that stuff is on the Start9 stuff. I'm really excited about it, so I can't wait to. Should be in Monday. Okay, so tying back to the whole King's Ranch thing and these people that are exiting the states because the United States legal framework just does not have its shit together because they're all run by criminals. We have this one, ZK Snacks is suspending its CoinJoin coordination service on June the 1st. The company, pioneering the development of Wasabi Wallet, is shutting down its CoinJoin coordination service effective June 1st, 2024. However, Wasabi Wallet will continue to function as a regular Bitcoin wallet. It just will not have coin inside of it. Quote, "It was an honor and a privilege," said ZK Snack CEO Max Hillebrand. Last week, the company announced blocking United States citizens and residents from visiting its websites, downloading and using Wasabi Wallet and any related products and services, including APIs and RPC. Quote, "Wasabi Wallet will continue to function as a regular Bitcoin wallet. Users can generate private keys to receive and send Bitcoin. Even without CoinJoin, Wasabi's client-side filtering architecture, core integration, and custom coin selection make it the most private light wallet available. ZK Snacks will fund the continuous maintenance of Wasabi Wallet's basic features." Said. The change also affects users of other wallet clients that connect to the Snacks coordinator like Trezor Suite and BTC Pay Server. It will be interesting to see how BTC Pay Server starts operating. I have not heard a word from the BTC Pay guys. If y'all have, please drop me the note on Nostr. My public key is always in the show notes. Just scroll on down and you find it begins with input. Throw that into the search of all Nostr clients. You'll find me. Just use my input. That's the way it goes. OpenSats grants a long-term support grant for Shashwat Vangani, This LTS, or long-term support grant, will enable Shashwat to focus on the deployment of Bolt 12 within the Lightning development kit, and a particular focus on blinded paths, invoice overpayments, and retrying invoice requests. That said, and they are delighted to announce the LTS grant for Vangani, who hails from India. He was born in 2021, alumni from the summer of Bitcoin. Oh, I'm sorry, he wasn't born. Shashwat is a 2021 alumni from the summer of Bitcoin, and he has been working on Bitcoin on a new reactive version T developer education tool called Saving Satoshi, as well as the Lightning Kit, or LDK. The OpenSats long-term support program is funded by donations. To continue supporting contributors like Shashwat and other LTS grantees, consider contributing to the OpenSats General Fund. Okay, that's basically all the news that I got for you. Most of it, anyway. Let's see where we are. We're at 46 minutes. I do have one other thing here. Fidelity, Fidelity Investments, which they've been Bitcoiners for quite a while now. Well, they've got something they're saying. Pension funds are exploring Bitcoin investments on ETF approval. Okay, let's find out more about what that means. Vivek Sen, Bitcoin Magazine. Fidelity, a major financial services firm, says that pension funds are starting to explore investing in Bitcoin, particularly after the approval of spot Bitcoin exchange traded funds. Here, yeah, we knew this was going to happen. It was just specifically, it's going to, and more specifically, we're waiting 90 days from January the 11th, which has passed. I believe we are now 90 days into New Year, so therefore everybody can start examining this without any kind of there's a rule that you can't, that certain people like retirement investment advisors, they can't touch shit until 90 days after the approval of some kind of new. Anyway, Fidelity's been bullish on Bitcoin for years, launching its digital assets branch in 2018 and bringing a successful Bitcoin ETF to market earlier this year. The firm's ETF attracted significant capital compared to competitors. But now, Fidelity's VP of Digital Assets, Manuel Nordeste, says the company is engaging with major pension funds and other institutional investors without allocating to. Speaking at a recent event, Nordeste said, quote, "We're starting to have conversations with the larger, real money institutional types, and we're getting some of those clients as well as corporate and so on." Quote, his comments come after BlackRock also mentioned yesterday having educational conversations with pension funds regarding Bitcoin ETFs. Recent 13F filings show major pension consultants have already purchased spot Bitcoin ETF. This mounting evidence indicates serious diligence is underway of allowing pension investments in Bitcoin vehicles like ETF, with over $4 trillion in capital. U.S. pension funds committing even the tiniest of portfolio allocation could drive significant inflows. And while pensions remain cautious compared to family offices and hedge funds who have already bought Bitcoin exposure, their conservative mandates and focus on risk management has kept most pensions on the sidelines so far. If pensions follow the lead of early adopters, it would represent a seismic shift in mainstream acceptance. Thus far, Bitcoin ETFs have seen tremendous demand since launching this year. While this week marked record outflows, the long-term trajectory still appears highly favorable. So Fidelity, both Fidelity and BlackRock, are saying that they are having conversations with pension funds. This goes back directly to one of the reasons I was saying that whether you like them or hate them, BTC ETFs are here to stay. And the reason that they are is the only instrument that is going to allow pension funds to gain access to something like Bitcoin. Pension fund in and of itself cannot buy gold for pensioners. They cannot do that. They are not allowed to buy the underlying asset. They wouldn't even, not that they would, but they wouldn't even be able to buy barrels of crude oil. But they can buy ETFs. And there's ETFs for almost everything. There's gold ETFs, there's silver ETFs, there's Bitcoin ETFs, and God forbid there's shitcoin ETFs. But now, after this 90-day cooling off period, release of a new investment vehicle, now the pension company is able to start engaging with the people who would be their retail connect to be able to buy those. That's what's happening now. They are engaging in preliminary conversations to figure out what does it look like if we, as pension fund XYZ, buy a bunch of spot Bitcoin ETFs from Fidelity. That's where they're at right now. They haven't really not pulling the trigger on it, but the fact that they are paying people the high prices that they pay the people who have these conversations means that they are not just blowing smoke up each ass. This is going to happen. So just be aware. Again, whether you like the or hate the ETF, you're going to have to live with the ETFs. It's just a matter of fact. All right, let's see. What else is going on? All right, that's going to do it for the end of the morning roundup. Okay, Dad says jokes. Just got hospitalized due to a peekaboo accident. They put me in the ICU. All right. It's end of the week. And we got Fidelity and BlackRock engaging with pension funds. We've got a whole bunch of Bitcoin infrastructure guys bailing out of the United States market because nobody knows what the United States, which is, by the way, if you're an American or United States citizen, you should be embarrassed. God knows I am. This is embarrassing. This is straight up embarrassing. We know why they're doing it, but it doesn't matter. When you're a citizen of a country and nobody wants to do business with you, that's not your fault. That's the fault of the administrations, both state and federal, that just don't want control. That's what I'm most. We have people that are feeding upon their own hubris. The sheer fucking hubris of all this is so eye-watering that when you get a Kleenex and you wipe the tears out of your eyes, you realize that nobody in other countries wants to do business with you because they could be hauled into the United States and tried and jailed. It's embarrassing beyond any comprehension of the word. Now that embarrassment is going all the way to Central Washington State, where they're using a RICO charge to force somebody to testify not only against their own will, but in direct violation of the Fifth Amendment of the Bill of Rights of the United States. You don't think that we have some major shit to clean up and I again, somebody asked me, well, if you wanted the federal government collapsing, how would you? And here's my proposal. All the 50 states need to have a come to Jesus moment with themselves. Texas, not talking to Texas, just talking to Oklahoma, just talking to just talking, so on. And the majority of them need to come to the conclusion they are divorcing themselves. And I'm using the term divorce, not secession. I'm not even talking about. This goes beyond. Completely kicking out all federal government employees out of their state. Say you can stay here if your house is here and your family's here. We understand that, but you can't work for them. All federal government fundage for all things in those states needs to cease. On the state's end, the state needs to tell the federal government, we're not taking another penny of your money. We're going to do this upon our own. And there will be states that are more than capable of. There will be states that will not be able to do that, and those will be the states that will do the rest of what I suggest. That is to no longer give state money back to the federal government, protect their citizenry from all income taxes at the federal level, will, in physical force, defend their citizenry against any federal action. And then the adoption of the United States, or the Constitution of the United States, by each individual state, and that Constitution then supersedes, in every manner of the word, that state's Constitution, but only if the Constitution that is adopted, the United States Constitution, also adopted full Bill of Rights, which is 1 through 10, a modification of the Amendment number 11, which talks about being able to sue the state. There needs to be an amendment on. There needs to be a modification on that. We cannot just allow Texas to stand on their citizenry, federal government citizenry. The 13th Amendment, I'm not going to suggest slavery. That's ridiculous, because you're just taking the property of somebody else and that property themselves. So no slavery. That's ridiculous. The 19th Amendment, which gives women the right to vote. I mean, come on. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm not suggesting that we end up cavemen. But for the most part, a lot of the other amendments past the Bill of Rights is why we are here to begin with. The amendment that installs the income tax and central bank needs to be gone. Then and only then will the federal government have lost most of its power in talking about rebuilding this son of a bitch yet one more time. At least in the short to medium term, maybe it'll be okay, except that everybody has to not only understand for themselves, but also impart the knowledge to them that what will eventually happen, exact same goddamn thing. Because apparently hairless, treeless apes cannot be trusted to do the right thing any longer than. It's ridiculous, it's embarrassing, but here we are. This is how you get people using RICO charges against ranchers who wanted to dredge the silt out of ponds that they built 60 years ago. Nobody ever gave them shit about before. Well, now they're levying RICO charges to force somebody to testify against their will, direct violation of the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution rights. If we don't start cleaning this shit up now, we're not going to have a union to defend. That said, I will see you on the other side.